Well, good morning, everyone. It's been exhausting. The entire week's been exhausting. It's Saturday morning, and I think we're just I'm just speaking from my feelings. We're exhausted. We're exhausted. We're anxious, a little bit nervous, and hoping that something changes at this point. We have been waiting with bated breath now for almost a week for the hurricane to hit, and it's going to be slow go. So keep all of this in mind. Late last night, 11 o'clock, we watched it go from a Category 4 back up to a Category 5 hurricane. So the winds were, significant enough, and it was still kind of brushing the top edge, the coastline of Cuba, which, and I've said this to you guys candidly, it surprised me because I thought maybe that interaction, because there's a lot of mountains there, that might help a little bit. Kim, I wish I could tell you something good. Whatever I'm telling you may not be good, but I promise you it's honest and it's what we know at this point. But anyway, as it brushed the coastline of Cuba, it did weaken some. So there is some good news, but it may only be temporary. I'm going to remind you guys, you will see shifts in the track. You will see some fluctuations in intensity. As you see all of this, don't bite. And what I mean when I say that is, don't assume that all of a sudden it's changing. Its direction has shifted. It's not going to impact. It's going to be more severe on an impact. It's going to be more power. It's going to be weak. I actually had a friend, and I won't say her name, and she's in Boston, has a friend in West Palm, and that friend said, I heard it was only going to be a Category 1 hurricane. In West Palm Beach, I heard it was only going to be a Category 1 hurricane. I'm not evacuating. So I want to remind you guys to be cautious of where your information is coming from. I'm not telling you anything that I'm making up. I am sharing with you stuff that the Hurricane Center, the experts in the United States, have sat down and they have said, you know what? Here's our best, using all the information we have, here's our best track. Keep these things in mind. Don't listen to armchair meteorologists. I don't know where they're getting their information from. I get a hunch, or I've been at sea for, 40. Look at the data. Look at the scientists. Look at the information that they have. Put some faith and some confidence in them because we're relying on them. And I'm telling you this, they have done a really good job. All right. Here's what we know. We're at 11 o'clock, and I apologize for being late, but like many of you, I also had to update my family. So some reassurances. I don't think Diane is out here, but there's a woman, Diane Roberts, who has been a savior for me, and she's been assisting. And I will share this with you. I also have a friend, Gesna, who's in Tampa, and people have been so nice. And there has been... It's an amazing feeling of generosity. It's an amazing feeling of kindness. And yeah, there's that, lone ranger who has maybe been a little short. And at times, perhaps it was me. I'll admit that. But overall, I think the spirit is good because, I said this to you guys before. There you go, Jess. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go to the gym because I feel like that's my way to kind of get some of the stress and some anxiety out. So I want you guys to know we're all in this. All right. So last night, what did we do? Well, we'll talk about that later. Let's go with the 11 o'clock update. How's that? Let's see what the Hurricane Center is saying at this point. Remember, we have 2, 5, 8, 11 regular advisories every 3 hours. It's both AM and then it's also on the PM side. All right. So I'm going to flip this around. Let's see what we've got out here. Okay, so here's the advisory. I've got the track on it. Oh, look, I lost the advisory. All right, here we are. All right, so what do we know? Let's go to the bottom here. We have, look at this. The maximum sustained wind is 125 miles per hour. It may be temporary, but right now the center, and you can see it. It's kind of rolling up the coast of Cuba. It's right there, just about, because actually, if you look, it's 79.8, but it's almost right there at that, and this is my deciding factor, that 80-degree longitude. So there it is, and at this longitude, in about 22.8 north, right, we've got 125-mile-an-hour winds. So there has been some interaction with the mountains on Cuba. It has helped in terms of weakening it a bit, but this may only be temporary. Don't look at this and say, oh, Thank God it's weaker. It's not going. No, we're not really sure about that. And when I say this, we're not really sure. We're not, honestly. Nobody's going to, bet the farm on this thing. It is still moving westward. It's a little bit slower. I want to believe that slow motion is typically an indication of the turn that's about to come, and we know it's still going to come. But here's what we're looking at right now, right? So you guys are looking at this with me. Here's where the hurricane force winds are in that orange, which is pretty, close to the center. So this is the hurricane force. We've got a tropical storm force wind field that's pretty large as well. So remember, it's a big system. Even though we see a dot or a point and a skinny line, that's not only where the storm is. So, excuse me, I'm tired too. We've got and I'll show you all this, but we've got a storm that probably covers one of these boxes. That's about the width of this thing. It's about 400 miles in its entirety across. We're going to measure it off because this is down and dirty and real simple, right? So my fingertip here, good thing I had my nails done already, it comes in. Now, I'm going to center it up with that area. If it comes in, the whole peninsula is impacted. It is. There's no way. It's just not that wide. We're not 400 miles across. So we're going to have tropical storm force winds first, and then the hurricane force is embedded within the center of all that. All right, that's what we have. Has there been a change? Well, last night, the last run at 11 a.m., at least that's what I was looking at. I was trying to actually avoid this for a little bit. Kind of adjusted it. I'm not going to say there's a shift. The shift seems to suggest it's moving more toward that direction and it's a done deal. There is nothing that's a done deal. And honestly, you guys, by the way, I'm just talking candidly. Nothing's a done deal because, a migration could actually end up being another migration or a nudge to the right. So don't bank on it following that. Bank on it kind of being within that cone. See that white area? That's what we call the cone. The cone of uncertainty, the margin of whatever you want to call it. We're pretty confident it's going to be within that area. Now, it could follow this more narrow, thin line, but it's also possible that it's a little bit to the right or it's a little bit to the left. All right, so what happens if it's a little bit more toward the right? If it's a little bit more toward the right, well, that means, for the most part, the east coast of Florida is in better shape, but the west coast, and this is where we have storm surge warnings, we have hurricane warnings. See the red? By the way, that's the hurricane warning all the way up, but, we'd have more of an onshore flow, and it's really dangerous because the continental shelf is just really so shallow, which means it's a higher rise of water on the Gulf versus the Atlantic. That's what that means. So it stays this way. Notice, even at the time of landfall, that M in the center, actually means that it's going to be a major hurricane. So right now we've got 125 mile an hour winds, still a category 3 hurricane. This is incredibly warm water here across the straits. The dangerous part is once it emerges off the coast of Cuba, it interacts. Warm water is really the fuel for a hurricane. That could cause it, and we're thinking it's a possibility, and a pretty strong one at that, to kind of rejuvenate itself. And then it kind of heads across the Keys and starts to push toward the southwest coast of Florida. Brushing up along the west coast, there's going to be a little bit of land play. So we've got some friction, we've got some drier air coming in, but you can't bank on it being all of a sudden really, really weak. Yesterday, we've watched changes, and I'm just pointing out the changes that we've seen. They go from M and maybe to an H and then maybe to a... Well, right now, it looks like, especially if it stays on the coast, there's going to be so much warm water being fed in from the west that it won't have as much of an opportunity to really decrease in intensity or size. So along the coast, it can pull in all that moisture. That's the problem. So it rides up the west coast, and then it kind of pushes more toward the northwest, staying on this path, right? Right here. You've got a lot of water coming in off the Gulf, a lot of rise of water along the east coast of Florida. And that's nothing compared to what they're going to see in the Keys. As it approaches this way, because a lot of us are up here in North Florida, specifically the Tallahassee area, we're looking at early on everything, especially in the Panhandle and down toward the coastline, it's got a counterclockwise rotation. Everything would push offshore. Now that's fantastic. However, it keeps moving. As it moves toward the northwest, remember the whole counterclockwise rotation now will start to shift. So as it shifts and it moves, the shift of the winds is going to be from that offshore to now an onshore. So there's going to be, and we've seen this with storms that have been weaker, You know, the most severe flooding that we had was in 2005 with Dennis. I don't think we're going to see that because of the way it moved, but you know, that push of water has no place to go. It'll go inland. So there's a significant rise of water. There can be some storm surge also in the panhandle, and we will continue to get oscillation. So don't be surprised when you see that, okay? Again, don't fall for it because we'll continue to adjust. All right, that's not what I want to show you. Here's what I want to show you. Here's the satellite. This is really good. You're so very welcome, Jennifer. I'm just trying to do what I know I can do and be helpful if I can. Here's Cuba. All right, there's Cuba. So they keep shifting the perspective here. Hispaniola's over here, here's Cuba. So the center is the eye, and that's what we're watching when we say here's where it's located. So the center is across Cuba. There it's been. It kind of bounced in late last night. It was a second landfall. You'll notice the orange kind of, the lighter orange it almost turns to a red. Indication that the cloud tops are getting taller. So that may be the signal that we're going to start to see that re-strengthening that I just kind of mentioned. So it's going to keep moving up the spine. It heads toward the Keys. Really warm water. You guys have been around the block long enough to know. Really warm water and hurricanes just, when they go together, this thing can blow up. And really, there's no way I can sugarcoat this. I can dress it up. I'm not going to now because we're in serious mode. And I'm tired. Here's the latitude and longitude. This is the grid. I put it on before for you guys, and it really is so you can see the motion. So if you follow a straight line, that's east-west. It's not moving, in any particular direction. It has mostly been moving slightly north of west, and so you see west-northwest. It's not now, and it does look like, at least according to the Hurricane Center, a due west motion, but you almost have to say it's more of a slightly north of west motion because it's lifting a little bit. So we're still waiting on the turn. What's the turn? Let's go back to, you gotta love when it's live, right? All right, we're waiting for the turn to come. What turns it is a big high pressure. Big high pressure in the Atlantic, air moves clockwise. As the hurricane gets caught in the backside of that flow, it's gonna lift up and turn. And so we were hoping, begging, for Sandra, how are you? I saw your cousins are in Atlanta, and I'm hoping that your mom may have come up there as well. But the high is going to be the steering mechanism, the turning mechanism. So once it starts to lift, it'll lift off the coast of Cuba, heads toward the Keys. Here's our turn, and a lot of times they pick up speed, so you might see it start to accelerate. So I do want to remind you of a couple of things. It's not Harvey. It's not Harvey because remember, Harvey just kind of stalled out. And when I say stalled out, that thing sat across the Cuba, it's so not Cuba, is it? That thing sat across Texas. As it sat across the Texas area, there was nothing to push it or steer it, and so it dumped ridiculous amounts of rain. That's not going to happen here. It's not slow moving, it's moving. The motion has slowed, but it's not a standstill, it's not a crawl, it's not stationary, it's moving. So it will keep moving. And as it moves, and we would prefer if it's going to come in, just come in and go quickly. This way we can figure out what we need to do at this point, but it will keep moving. So I want you guys at least to, hi Roy, how you doing? I want you guys to feel confident in knowing that, there's motion here, so that will help us a little bit. There's the motion. You actually see it pretty well on this. Now what I can do here is to also show you, and this is kind of collectively, here are the forecast points. Now, these are a little tougher to see because I've got this version of the satellite showing the taller cloud tops. And the nice thing is, instead of just white clouds, you see where the intensity is. So here's the center. Again, there it is, kind of up the spine of Cuba. Here's the eye wall, right? So that's strong winds, heaviest rain. It's all happening here. Some of it on the outskirts in the outer bands, the spiraling bands. But here, it's a brief burst of rain and wind. And then you'll get a break, and then a brief burst of wind and rain. All right, so here are the forecast points. Again, according to the Hurricane Center, they got to keep moving along the coastline of Cuba. Then it emerges off the north coast, and then it pushes toward the Keys into the Florida Straits, and then toward the peninsula of Florida. All right, so not really the best that we can do in terms of the motion. And while it is right now, at least looking like, there's been some weakening again. Please assume at this point that it may only be a temporary thing. All right, this thing is showing rainfall. The good news here, this is not going to be a big rain event. It's going to be more of a wind and a storm surge event. Now, what does that mean? It means it's moving and it's moving quickly. Slow-moving systems, whether it's a really powerful hurricane or a weak tropical storm, but slow-moving, more rain. This is faster moving. All right, so rainfall amounts up here. Here's your key over here. Right, so the green and yellow, let's go 2 to 6. You know, the least would be about 2 inches, maybe possibly 6. Now when you're looking at the orange represents 6 to 10 inches. 6 to 10, and then if you're in the northeast Florida area, right, along the coast near the Jacksonville, Duval County, maybe even eastern sections of this market, you could be looking at higher amounts. And yes, there's a possibility of 10 to 15, some isolated totals that may exceed that 6 to 10 inch range. Now, South Florida, this is where the rainfall amounts are ridiculous. You know, because here's where it hits with full fury, full intensity. And what does that mean? Well, that fuchsia, that pink color, could be as much as a foot, possibly a foot and a half of rain. You know, if it's 15 to 20 inches, that's what we're looking at. A little bit lesser here, but this is really where the surplus of rainfall is going to be. So assume that's going to be about across the lower tip, the lower third of the state of Florida. And then as it moves to the north, you know, not as much, and then some pockets will be a little bit larger. But up here right now, according to what we're looking at it, the way it moves and, you know, the intensity right now, rainfall amounts not quite that severe. All right, some of this changed last night, and again, it has been adjusted and has changed today. So if you don't know, we had nothing, and late last night they issued the hurricane watch along the coast. All right, so we've got some changes now. The changes now, and I'm going to ignore Cuba, not that I'm not concerned about what's happening there, but right now we're concerned about what's going to happen to us. Everything in purple. So basically, and this is really just the eastern side of Jefferson County, Madison County, and everything across the peninsula. Jefferson, Madison, and everything down, right? So eastern edge of Jefferson, so it doesn't really include Jefferson, so we'll go with all of Taylor and all of Madison counties. Areas east, areas south. You're in a hurricane warning. What do you need to know about this? It's not just the coastline. The hurricane warning is not just the coastline. It's for all of these counties across the state of Florida that you're seeing in that purple color. Hurricane warning means hurricane conditions likely within 36 hours. Hurricane conditions likely within 36 hours. That's what the warning means. Okay, so north of that, there's orange. See that orange? Again, this is also new. We just had it on the coastline late last night, but now we have a hurricane watch. A hurricane watch means hurricane conditions possible in 48 hours. 2 days, possible conditions of a hurricane. Again, not just on the coast. So it's not just a coastal event, it's also inland. Notice the hurricane watch includes Leon, Wakulla, Franklin County, not Gulf County. Gulf County's over there. And then you've also got some of these southern counties in the state of Georgia. You know, barring Seminole and Decatur, you've got all areas east and then all the way to the east coast of Florida. So we're kind of in this area, most of you. The rest of the state is under the hurricane warning. Hurricane conditions within 36 hours. Possible when it's a watch, within 48 hours. Now the yellow area, so this is a little bit farther north, it's also a little bit farther to the west, that's your tropical storm watch. Tropical storm watch, tropical storm conditions possible, and see they even wrote it that way, I actually missed it because I'm a little tired, but it's possible within 48 hours possible. A warning is likely within 36 hours. It used to be about 24, but they changed that, they adjusted it. So I want you guys to see that. I don't want you to think I'm inland, I'm on high terrain, I'm high elevation, I'm good. Nope. It's not a coastal event. So please remember that and keep that in mind. All right, this may require some patience because everything has been a little bit slow. I'm going to try to read questions as I'm trying to load these things. I don't know what I'm loading at this point, but we'll give it a shot because the computer is a little bit slow. All right, so I'm going to pull up some radars. And honestly, the reason I want to do that, radar is a great tool for showing us exactly what's going on right now. And it only happens when it gets close to land because they're land-based. They will send out signals and we can pick up the rainfall. Okay, so let's go to the southeast right now. Let's loop this image. Yeah, JJ, this one is really scary. I think it's got us all a little bit on edge. All right, what are we watching? Here's radar. Now, there's... What did I do? Oh, here we are. All right, this stuff is tropical air moving in. Not really storm related, but everything that's kind of pushing across the northern half of the east coast of Florida is kind of coming in. Live in Perry, they plan on staying. Perry's inland. We run from the water, we hide from the wind. So hopefully they have done oh no, they're right on the highway, not in front of the beach. They're going to get some wind and they're going to get some rain. I don't know that the expectation of exact wind speeds we know at this point. So I'm just sharing you what we do know. We're not really sure, but remember, we have the hurricane watch, which means the conditions are possible, and the hurricane's got winds of 74 and higher. Now remember, right now, sustained winds are 125. I'm not guaranteeing any kind of a wind speed at this point, but we got a major hurricane. I don't think we should bank on anything. You know, you always hear it, and I'm going to say it because it's the right thing to say. Prepare for the worst. Expect the worst conditions. If it doesn't happen, you feel better. If it does happen, you're ready. All right, we're down here. So this is not really tropical related, but that's that big flow because of the counterclockwise spin because of the storm. So Irma's pulling in a lot of that moisture, and there's some rain as a result. Here, this is real rain because of the hurricane. So last night we said the earliest possible arrival of these tropical storm force winds, earliest would be 8 o'clock this morning. They may be getting some of these tropical storm force winds in these bands. The bands aren't as intense as the eye wall, but you can get this burst of rain. So you can get heavy rainfall, you can get some heavy thunderstorms, and some wind gusts. But the only good news here is at least there are some breaks, because it's not a solid wall of rain. You guys see that? Remember, the center is rolling off the coast of Cuba. We don't have the radar going out quite so far because, yeah, the Earth is round. I'm sorry for all of you that think it's flat, but it's round, so it kind of bends off the signal. So the center's here. It's not like the rain stops here. It's just the edge of where we can scan. All right, so the center's here. Here's the rain. Here's the rain starting to move in. Again, look at the scope of this, right? And that's just the rain that we're picking up on the radar. Let's assume it ooze. It comes all the way up the peninsula, right? Because it's covering everybody from east to west. Don't look at where a center or a point is. I'm going to tell you this 1,000 times. The center of the point is not really the confinement of where the hurricane is. It covers coast to coast. All right, so you have that kind of going on. I actually want to zoom in a little bit. Let's go down to the radar in Miami. All right, so they're going to load this thing. We're going to loop it. We're going to update it to make sure it's here. And for those of you that have friends in some of these areas, I think it may be helpful. You get to see some of these local cities. All right, so there's Marathon. There's Key West, right? Marathon, Key West. They've had some of these outflow bands, right? Spiraling bands, feeder. You call it what you like. It's a band. So it's rain and thunderstorms, a few wind gusts, and they're moving through. Notice the direction of motion northeast to southwest. So that's because of that big flow, the counterclockwise spin. There it goes. All right, what's happening in Key Largo? They too, some of the bands. Now, I'm not seeing a whole lot in the way of the more intense thunderstorms, but again, it's early. Here's Miami. Miami's starting to see a little bit of that rain kind of lift up and then move in. Same deal. It's going to come in. Now notice, this is the way the rain is moving. If the rain is moving this way, the air is moving this way. If the air is moving this way, it pushes the water that way. Are you guys with me on this? If it pushes the water that way, here's your storm surge. Everything's coming ashore. You'll start to see the, at the coastline, you'll start to see the slapping of the water at the coast. As it gets closer, as it lifts up, you'll get more of a slapping, and that's the rise of water. So really, it's the difference between the high tide and then what happens because of the storm. That's why they call it a storm surge. It's a surge of water due to the storm. So that's what's going to be happening there. So right now it's early, but early is just the leading edge of what's happening. We can go up the coast a little bit. Let's do that. It takes a second to load. Everybody in the world wants to see what's going on. And I love radar because radar is, it's a movie of what's happening right now. This is the Melbourne radar. So this will show a little bit higher up the east coast of Florida. And as it loads, we'll see the motion here. Here we go. It was a stall tactic. We always did it in TV. Again, not storm related directly, indirectly. There's a lot of rain here. Now, the bulk of which is right now sitting off the coast, but the hurricane gets closer. The pull, the fetch, whatever you want to call it, gets a little bit strengthened, and then all of this kind of comes ashore. So you're getting a little bit of rain if you guys are on the coast between Daytona. Let's go all the way down to Melbourne. That rain is moving on. It's a little bit north of east direction. As it pushes on, Diane, I owe you. I owe you so big. I can't even thank you enough. Your son Justin is adorable, and really, you guys are right there at the top of my list of most generous people that I know and I am indebted to right now. So thank you again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, go up a little bit higher. Here's Palm Coast. Here's St. Augustine. Of course, Jacksonville will be higher than that. You know, for those of you trying to get a perspective, there's Gainesville, but we've got a little bit of that rain kind of pushing along the east coast of Florida. Here's the lake. There's Okeechobee. You got some rain inland, not directly hurricane related, but, you know, at this point there is some rain happening. So this is it's the predecessor of the hurricane. So think about it this way. So when you're asking what's happening now, we can't see exactly everything. We'd have to kind of go to each of these cities individually. This is a really good, I'm going to call it down and dirty assessment. All right, this one's been a little bit slow at loading. I apologize for that, but there are a couple of other graphics that I want you guys to see. Here is, and you know, the color version isn't going to load. So let me show you the Hurricane Center's version. This is an experimental product. This is the first time the Hurricane Center has been using it this season. And this season, as they do it, what they're trying to do is to estimate when the winds are going to start to pick up. Now, when you see this graphic and it says reasonable time in terms of arrival of tropical storm force winds, keep in mind that a tropical storm is 39 to 73 miles per hour. All right, so here's Saturday, this dashed line, Saturday at 2 o'clock. Reasonably, we're not going to see these tropical storm force winds until, you know, about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, gosh, please work, because we can't have you fail now, which is within 2 hours, because we're at the noon hour. So within the next couple hours, you're going to start to see some of these winds. Southern tip, extreme southern tip. That includes the Keys, Key Largo, Key West, Marathon, these areas. All right, then we head a little bit later tonight, 8 o'clock tonight. That's the lower end of the state. So the lower end of the state, we're talking Fort Myers, Naples, Everglades City. I guess we're going to have to go back down to the extreme southern end now in terms of the radar. Let's go down to Miami because you guys are going to get everything first, right? And that's what I want you to see. So here's Everglades City, there's Naples, as far north maybe as Fort Myers on the west coast. And then let's say Belglade, West Palm down. That's that lower tip. Let's call it south of Lake Okeechobee. That is the earliest arrival, right? Here's Lake Okeechobee, south of Lake Okeechobee. All right, good. At least my mapping skills are decent at this point, but that's 8 o'clock tonight. So here's where the winds start to pick up. So when we say it's the earliest reasonable time of tropical storm force winds, that's the beginning. That's 39 to 73. Embedded within that big cloud band is outside tropical storm, but then a smaller area on the inside with hurricane force winds. And so that's what you have to expect. It starts weaker, but then the winds are going to start to pick up. How strong are they going to be? I can't tell you in every single city. I honestly can't. Coastline will be more severe because there's not going to be some weakening. Southern Florida, the most severe because there's, you know, it approaches at full intensity. There's no weakening once it starts to hit. Overland, there may be some weakening, but expect at least a Category 3 or 4 hurricane. Again, we prepare for the worst, we hope for the best. That's Saturday night. Here's early tomorrow morning. Sunday morning, the tropical storm force wind should be slightly north of Lake Okeechobee. Let's go back. Now we're going to have to shift, aren't we? All right, so we're going up a little bit. We'll go back to the Melbourne radar. Why? Because the wind field was south of Lake Okeechobee, and that is through 8 o'clock tonight, 2 a.m. tomorrow. Here's where I'm getting this from. 2 a.m. tomorrow. Now, you've got the arrival of tropical storm force winds. We'll call it from Fort Pierce through Sarasota. My buddy Cindy's over in the Bradenton, Sarasota area. This is when you guys should start to think about the winds picking up. So it's going to get loud. That's what that means. It gets loud. Air starts picking up speed. Air that moves quickly is noisy. So the noise is the sign of the hurricane kind of outside. So that's 2 o'clock in the morning. Here's 8 o'clock. So 8 o'clock Sunday morning. Where are we? That's the Tampa Bay area and then slightly north of east. Tampa Bay area. Whoop, we got to go to the radar. Tampa Bay area slightly north of east. So from Tampa through Orlando to the coast, right? This area. You know what? We'll call it I-4, right? There's I-4. It's tilted in the right direction. So this area, and this, of course, was 8 o'clock Sunday morning. 8 o'clock Sunday morning along I-4 corridor from Tampa to Orlando and the coastline. That's when you guys will expect these tropical storm force winds. Again, leading edge of the hurricane, at least the more significant part of the hurricane. We're back to the graphic. 8 o'clock Sunday night. Now, these things are not, cut in stone. It's not black and white. It's gray. It may, any of these lines, they may lift a little bit. They may sink a little bit. So this is their best guess. You could give it plus or minus a couple of hours. But Sunday night, this is part of this extreme area. In Taylor County, you may start to see some winds. You're in Jacksonville, Duval County, you've got the winds. There's the tilt. Not as much of a tilt. There's a little bit of an east-west orientation with a slightly north drift along the east coast around the Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Palm Coast areas. So it's up there. But let's assume that for most of the peninsula, by early Sunday evening, we all at least have tropical storm force winds. The core area closer to the center will have the hurricane force winds. And now here's 8 o'clock Monday morning. 8 o'clock Monday morning, now we've got the lower half of Georgia. We'll call it the lower third of Alabama. You guys are also within that possibility of tropical storm force winds. That means between Sunday night and Monday morning, that's where it is. That's the timing in this area. You guys are with me in Leon County. In this area, we've got Wakulla and Franklin and possibly even the Gulf County because we have the warning over toward the Indian Pass area. But this is when, in the overnight, we've got the winds picking up. So that's the wind. It's not saying anything truly necessarily about the intensity or how much we're going to get and for how long a period of time. But at this point, I think we have to expect that we could be seeing those arrival of winds and that could survive for, I'm trying to pull up the graphic now. We could see that arrival for maybe a 12-hour window. So here's our big picture of Irma on the satellite. We got 200 miles on either side of the center, a total of 400 miles of cloud cover. That may not include all of the bands, but here's Cuba. Here are the forecast points, and I think if you really look carefully, you can see the numbers in the middle of the points. Right now it's a 3. We are thinking as it lifts, it goes back to a 4, and then it could be 8, and they've got a 4 over here as well, but 3 or 4 as it approaches the peninsula. There's just so much that is happening. And I honestly, I think part of the problem, part of the problems, this is a long event. This has been long lasting. We have been watching this thing for a week. I'm exhausted. You guys are exhausted. And there's nervousness and anxiousness of what's going to happen and, how bad is it going to be? We don't know. We don't know. We're doing our best to share the information with you guys as we can. I've said this 1,000 times, and I guess I'm saying the same stuff. I got nothing else working here. Stay calm. Be patient. You've done everything that you can. You have bought your supplies. You have your non-perishables. Tonight's a good night. Weather-wise for us locally, have a nice meal. Sit with your family. Make sure everybody is comfortable. Do your best to keep watching. Pay attention. Don't focus on it. Tran wants to know if the eye is the west. I guess it's on that one. On the west coast of Florida, will be these swells on the east. Yes. Because it's so big and the counterclockwise flow, it pulls everything in. There's going to be a storm surge. And a lot on the southeast coast, and that I'm going to call it from, we'll say maybe south of Fort Pierce, but through the West Palm, Fort Lauderdale areas, that's where it's going to be a really high surge. And then once it lifts, and there's a little more room, but it's still going to exacerbate the height of the water. So we'll see the water rise level there. Alex, you guys should have an Atlanta, yeah, Atlanta party. I mean, there's so many of you up there, and I feel good. At least you're in a safer environment, but you also know that you're going to get whatever comes at you after it leaves us. So you could get some wind gusts, and you may have some sporadic power outages and some rain, but at least you're not getting the full fury. But I know you're ready for that. Train, you said Rhonda was there, so I guess she's with you and her family is there. So I'm glad that she was able to evacuate. And given what we have all seen in terms of the gridlock on the roads, those of you that have evacuated, I'm proud that you did. I'm glad that you did. And I hope you're feeling comfortable because you're in a safer place. All right, let's go back to the watch warning map, because I think there's a couple of key things to note here. If you live along the coast, get out. If you live along the coast, get out. I don't, honestly, I'm not going to argue with you guys. You will have mandatory evacuation. Why do we want you out? The wind, the water, highest, strongest coastline. So why would you stay? Why would you stay and risk it and then put people like, my husband in jeopardy because you're going to call 911 and ask for help? It's not fair. It really isn't fair. I'm not preaching to you, but I suppose I am. There's so many first responders out there. I'm not the only one married to, a deputy, a fire department person, EMT, police, a policeman and policewoman. These people have lives and families too. If they tell you to get out, get out. Now, I don't want an over-evacuation issue. I don't want you guys that don't have to leave, kind of panicking and then running out. You've had a little bit of lead time here, especially up here. And you still have today if you choose to go, but be patient on the roads. If you're on the coast, out. If you're in a mobile home, out. Yeah, now I'm yelling. And it's just unsafe. And the reason these places are unsafe, if there is room for air to get underneath, air gets underneath. So you got a tropical storm force wind, it's under a mobile home. It's under a car. That's why you can't leave late. It lifts, it flips. I'm not even going to tell you what's going to happen, but I want you to remember. And yeah, now you get to preach. I'm going to become a pastor, I think. It flips, and there's a possibility that there can be injuries, if not fatalities. Don't put yourself, don't put your family, don't put your friends at risk. If they tell you to go, go. It is so not worth it. My neighbors across the road here, they were in their house when Hermine came. And to keep things in perspectives, when Hermine came, it was a Category 1 hurricane. We've got a 3, which may be a 4 when it hits. And that's at landfall. And yeah, it may be weaker as it approaches, but who's banking on that? I'm not. So, they're in their house. It's a Category 1 hurricane. A tree falls. It's not anything that they caused. We're doing everything we're supposed to do. They did it right. The tree fell, water poured in. They were only able to move back in April. So we could have, those kinds of nightmares to have to deal with. But if they tell you to go, they're telling you to go because you may have a couple of things happening. You may be at the coast where the water level climbs. That's a storm surge. It floods in. Where are you going? You go up. If you go up, that's where the winds are the strongest. So you're in a house and a hurricane is hitting. What the heck are you going to do? You got the water level climbing. You got the winds increasing. It is dangerous. It can be deadly. I'm hearing so many stories about people, and I get it. Complacency is way up there, but they have chosen to stay. You can only encourage them as best you can. After that, you're going to have to, really hope for the best. We're all hoping for really good outcomes, and honestly, maybe the only way I can say it at this point. I think at times we have all become nervous. There's just too much time here. The more time we have, the more our minds spin. The more the mind spins, the more you're thinking, oh, what if I do this? Should I do that? Could I have done... Stop. You did everything you were supposed to do. You have prepared. Today, I'm going outside. Today, everything outside that's loose that can fly is in. Those of you still in Central Florida, you have a little bit more time. As well, you have a little bit of today, tonight. Your winds are going to start to pick up. But if you have fruit trees, everything off the branches. Sorry, but you know what? It's an urgent time for us. So anything that can act as a missile, all that flying debris, stop it. And that means it could fly into windows, those kinds of things. I posted on my Facebook, if you guys didn't see it, my buddy Leslie, Chapman Henderson with FLASH, the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes. 7 stupid things that we still do in hurricanes, one of which some people still think you're supposed to put the duct tape on the Stop that! No duct tape on the windows. It doesn't hold anything together. It doesn't protect anything. If you're going to do anything, you protect the outside of the window. Duct tape isn't going to do it. What if that window doesn't break? The window doesn't break. Now you got to clean off that duct tape, and you guys can imagine just how difficult that process is. So no duct tape on windows. Outside, if you can, protect it. If you have shutters, if you want to board up, I'm not going to condemn anybody for doing a little bit more than they need to or have to. If it makes you feel better, do it. But everything that's loose, that's outside, that can fly inside. And, don't be throwing things into the pool thinking that's a safe place. It's going to shift around. If you have a liner, I do. It may cut. Don't do that. Pile it up. You're not entertaining. Nobody cares if there's a mess in your house. I have plants that are hanging. I have a patio. It's all going to come in. I don't know where we'll put it, but we'll put it somewhere. We'll secure it. So today's the day to make sure you don't have flying missiles. And then tomorrow you can sit around and, maybe I forgot a couple of things, and you can just, pick up on the loose ends here. Remind them all that even though we gave time, we can still, we still, Donna, you're exactly right. We still have a little bit of time to make these accommodations and to make the preparations. So still be patient. I actually had good success with a little bit of gas and a couple of cans last night. There's a Gas Buddy app. That one, it's not always perfect, and it doesn't always have the most recent information, but it can be helpful in terms of telling you where there's gas. The trucks are still coming in at night, which means if you're a night owl, I am, or an early bird, you are going to catch the worm. So late at night, early morning, honestly, is your best shot. I actually watched the line for it's that Circle K at Thomasville and Timberlane. It was lined up down Timberlane, past Old Town Cafe into Market Square, and people were just, if you can avoid something like that. So the apps are helpful. It's a whole new era. We're in the era of social media. Social media is not only expectation, but response, and it's all almost at your fingertips immediately. So throw it out there. You're looking for gas, throw it out there. I'm sure somebody can help you with respect to timing of this stuff. All right, that was the 11 o'clock advisory. 2, 5, 8, 11, every 3 hours they come out. Good morning in Monticello. We are under a hurricane watch. This area, all inland counties, the coastline as well. We've got Leon, Wakulla, Franklin counties all on the hurricane watch. Conditions possible in 2 days, 48 hours. To the west, so we'll call it Quincy, the Gadsden County, the Liberty County, down to Gulf County, areas west into southwestern Georgia, extreme southwestern Decatur and Seminole counties, and areas northwest of there. Tropical storm watch. Conditions possible in 2 days, 48 hours. Okay, so I'm going to head to the gym. I'm going to try to get some of this anxiety out of my system. You guys relax for a little bit, and we'll chat a little bit later. I can't promise you at 2 o'clock, but, we'll be looking and monitoring, and I'll be posting at the very least. But for right now, stay calm, keep watching, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good day.